Do you want to bring balance to all the wireless radiation fields in your life, including 5G? The Omnia Radiation Balancer is a small sticker you can stick on any device. It changes the state of the field and creates a new resonance between the wireless radiation and your energy field. On the link below, you'll see all our testing results that show how the body responds excellently once you've made this change in your life. And here's a special offer for the Journey to Truth crowd. Just enter the word truth in caps at the checkout for your 10% discount. It's easy to bring balance back to your body with the Omnia Radiation Balancer.
This is totally unreal that this happened like in 1942 on this planet.
Hey guys, welcome back. A few things before we get started. As usual, today is actually the last day to purchase in-person tickets for the conference. I should say it's the last day to purchase 4-day tickets with the meal plan. The day passes are going to be available throughout the event, so you can just show up and take advantage of that. But if you plan on purchasing the 4-day pass with the meal plan, that must be purchased by midnight tonight. Live stream tickets are going to be available throughout the conference and afterwards. So if you want to purchase the replay, you're more than welcome to do that. It's going to be a fantastic experience. We can't wait. We can't wait for it. It's literally right around the corner next week. And we're super excited to see all of you guys. So if you feel compelled at all, grab a live stream ticket or grab a day pass. Come and hang out with us. We're really looking forward to it. Hopewell Farm CBD. If you guys are looking for a new CBD to try, that's a fantastic CBD oil. I highly recommend it. They are going to be a vendor at our conference, and they do have a 420 sale going right now, 20% off all their merchandise with promo code JTT420. And that code will be active at the conference. So if you are there, you get to take advantage of that 20% off discount as well. We also just teamed up with our friend Mason Fury, who makes these fabulous orgone pyramids. His business is called Merlin's Lab, and
Morgan's Lab.
Merlin's Lab. These things are absolutely incredible, as you can tell. High quality copper, some amazing crystals. This one has Lemurian quartz. The capstones are totally unique to his pyramids, including the legs, and some of them he sells are even lighted, and that he has different pyramids for different purposes. You can get 20% off of these pyramids by clicking the link below in the description and using the promo code Solstice. And I believe that website is just merlinslab.com, but all the links are in the description. Tonight, we are joined by Constance Victoria Briggs. I'm really excited to get into this. So she's the author of, actually, let me pull that up so I don't get it wrong. Author of the Encyclopedia of Angels, the Encyclopedia of God, the Encyclopedia of the Unseen World, and the Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries, which we're going to be diving into tonight because we know there's no shortage of conspiracy theories surrounding the moon. And it's an endless topic, as you'll probably find out once we start talking. I'm really excited to get into that. She's also been on a number of radio shows, including Coast to Coast AM with George Noory. So welcome to the show, Constance. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
Yes, it's
great to have you.
Yes, great to have you. So let's talk about the moon. Well, first, I'll give you the opportunity to introduce yourself a little bit for the people who don't know you. And I also want to know why you decided to write a book surrounding the moon mysteries.
Right. So So basically, I have spent most of my life on what I call a kind of spiritual journey and a search, like so many people, as to why we're here, where we came from. And long story short, I started delving into. I didn't find any answers in religion, so I started delving into other areas, and I became what I call a metaphysical person. And along the way, I discovered that I had guides that were, assisting me in obtaining mysterious information and kind of answering my questions along the way. So I went through this journey, basically, of going from religion to angels and the unseen world and learning all about that, and to understanding along the way that we are not alone in the universe. I feel like I've been guided for so long, for 30 years. And finally, I've come to this place in my life where I have all this information, including that we belong to a galactic community. Excuse me, when I first started my research into whether or not humans are created by extraterrestrials, which is another book, or where we came from, I was getting, a lot of these interesting stories about the cosmos. Some of the most interesting ones were coming from the moon. Now, when I went into all of this, I had no idea that there was something different about our moon. But as I collected these stories and did the research, it became quite a very serious subject, in it all. I was most interested in a book that came out in the 70s by a ufologist named Don Wilson. I don't know if you gentlemen are familiar with his work, but he did a couple of very important, what I consider important books on the moon. And he really introduced me and opened me up to a lot of the weird stuff. He talked, I'm not going to dwell on Apollo astronauts right now, but that's where he started. He started with the astronauts and things they had seen up there. So that's where I began. I began with thinking, the cosmos is, full of extraterrestrials, and to learning that this subject matter is touched, is connected to our moon. The moon, I believe, is not what we've been taught. In fact, the universe is not what we've been taught.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Most people think that the moon is this dead rock in the sky with nothing going on. And in the beginning, I was shocked to learn that there's quite a lot going on up there.
Oh yeah.
So that's where I started.
Yeah. Well, that's
Nice.
right. And that's me too. I think growing up, we're all taught that the moon is just this dead rock. So when part of everyone's awakening, at some point you discover like, wow, there's a lot more going on the moon, on this planet, in our solar system, underground, like everywhere. So those revelations are always exciting to me. So, we talk about this subject frequently, but we never really dive deep into it. So I'm curious to know what revelations you made as far as discovering what the moon actually is and what's actually going on there.
Right. So I started trying to inform people by writing this book, the Encyclopedia of Moon Mysteries, because when I talk to people about the moon, their eyes kind of glaze over, and they either don't take it seriously or they don't care or whatever. But there's some people said, I've never heard this information before. So I put it in the form of a book that is easy to read. But I have to start the story with the origin of the moon. All right. For people who have not heard about this, we really don't know where the moon came from. We don't know really what the moon is. People believe that they've been giving information that they were taught in school, but it's not accurate. All right. They have come up with about 5 different scenarios now of how the moon came to be, how it was created, and all of those scenarios were discounted. The one that is the most, the 2 that were the most prevalent are the capture theory, and that was dismissed. And then there is the giant impact theory, which is the one that I hear kids talking about now. Oh, the moon was created when a planet bumped into Earth and blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
But if you know, the story is that, a planet the size of Mars smacked into Earth, and when it did, the material from the Earth, spewed out into space, and eventually the moon was formed. That's the story. That's what I've heard in the news. That's what I've heard from students. And when you go on NASA's website, they say, well, maybe that it did.
Right.
It is very interesting, and they don't commit to it. Nowhere is there a commitment after all of this time, effort, and money spent on moon research and sending people to the moon. They still don't know where it originated. The scientists are stumped. So I want to share with you, gentlemen, I'm going to read a little bit, just slightly here, because I have my two favorite quotes that I like to share. One of them came in from the American author Isaac Asimov, and he stated, "What in blazes is our moon doing way out there? It's too far out to be a true satellite of Earth. It's too big to have been captured by the Earth. The chances of such a capture having been effected and the moon then having taken up a nearly circular orbit about the Earth are too small to make such an eventuality credible. But then, if the moon is neither a true satellite of the Earth nor a captured one, what is it?" So we sent people to the moon, and we thought we'd get information, but we didn't. And planetary scientist William Hartman states in his book, Origin of the Moon, "Neither the Apollo astronauts, the lunar vehicles, nor all the king's horses and all the king's men could assemble enough data to explain the circumstances of the moon's birth." So basically, guys, we don't know. We're still trying to figure it out.
Right.
Mhm.
Well,
Some people know.
well, some of the higher ups probably know
They
exactly.
absolutely know.
Yeah.
They're not
But
telling us.
we have to remind people that there was a time where there's writings in ancient cultures of a time with no moon.
Yes.
So at some point that means it was brought here, and then there's the whole theory. I think Alex Collier, and other people talk about that it's a ship that was either towed here or moved here under its own power, and it was parked and placed in such a way so it does something that no other planetary body in the solar system does, and that stays stationary, one side facing Earth at all times. Go ahead.
No. Well, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, when I have mentioned these things that you talked about just a second ago to people, they just look at me, and they're like, "Oh, you're making that up. Of course, the moon has always been in the sky." And so I direct them, which I do have in the Moon Mysteries book, I direct them to the philosophers that talked about a time before there was a moon. And people are trying to dismiss it, but you can't take what the philosopher said over here and say we accept it, and what they said over here and say, no, we're going to put that aside. They basically said that there was a time where Venus was the only planetary object that shined in the sky. And they talked about a group of people. They were even able to date it back to the Arcadians, who were a Greek race of people that lived kind of wild. They were, living in the wilderness. And one of the philosophers explained, how they lived, that they were wild people, they were uncultured, but they were there before the moon. What's interesting also is there is a sun, we call it the Sun Gate of Bolivia. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but this.
Well, no, I'm actually not.
No.
Are you, Aaron? Yeah.
No.
Enlighten us.
So this is an artifact found in Bolivia. It is ruins that looked like it was a place that was a planetarium of some sort, in a school perhaps for astronomy. part of the ruins have writings and symbols from the people during that time, where they wrote about a time without a moon and how and when that moon came in. And they said that there was disasters on the earth with this thing coming in, and they dated it at about 12,000 years ago that the moon came in. Which is, side note, Atlantis was destroyed around that same time in some cataclysm. So there is a question as to if this whole thing was related even to Atlantis. But I don't believe that they would, the ancients pulled hoax or lied in their symbols and writings. So I believe there is something to that idea of this being brought in. Now, if you go back to the 1970s, after the first Apollo 11 went up, there were two Russian scientists who looked at the evidence that NASA had put together about the moon, and they said, there's something really weird here. This just doesn't add up. And they wrote a paper. They were two Russian scientists that worked for the government, and they put their reputations on the line with this, and they wrote a paper talking about what they looked at. And they said that, first of all, the moon is hollow, which they learned from us. And that's another story, but just briefly said, we all heard the story that the moon rang like a bell when they crashed, the ascent stage.
And they were able to recreate that. So they were actually able to recreate that ring multiple times. So it wasn't just a one-off thing.
Right. It wasn't a one-off thing. And there was people say, people made this up. No, there was a press conference way back then, right after that. And the officials were saying, we rather not comment on what happened, but it just seems like, it's hollow in there, and we don't see how it could be hollow. It can't be natural if it's hollow. They didn't want to comment on it a lot, but the scientists did say that. So the Russian scientists came forward and they wrote a paper. It was published in Sputnik magazine. And what they said, after looking at the crater size on the moon, whenever a meteor hits the moon, no matter how heavy, it seems that all the craters are same size.
Same depth.
Same depth. Yeah. And they said that the moon was made up of these elements that are, we just don't find here. And if we do find at least one of them, it's in very small amounts. And it looks to them that if you put these elements together, I believe it was titanium, zirconium, and chrononium. Pardon me if I am butchering the names of the elements. I've gotten criticized from audiences before about that. But anyway, but they said if you were going to build a fortification on something to make it be able to stand the time and radiation of being in the, traveling across the universe, they would choose these materials. So these scientists said that and a few other things, but they concluded that the moon is not natural, that it was created outside of the universe and sent here. Now, whether or not the moon was sent here as a means of helping the Earth to thrive, that's a theory, or whether or not it was a generation ship, perhaps, with extraterrestrials on it, maybe fleeing a sun gone nova. Who knows? But they believe that it was sent here on purpose. Anyway, I would like to share a quote with you from these guys, because it was very interesting. They said, the scientists said, it is more likely that what we have here is a very ancient spaceship, the interior of which was filled with fuel for the engines, materials and appliances for repair work, navigation instruments, observation equipment, and all manner of machinery. In other words, everything necessary to enable it to serve as a Noah's Ark of intelligence, perhaps even as a home of a whole civilization, with the idea of a prolonged perhaps thousands of millions of years existence and long wanderings through space.
Right.
Yep.
I think,
Um,
well, go ahead. I don't want to
no,
interrupt you.
no,
You're on a roll.
Yeah.
okay, hold your thought because this is connected to what
Okay.
they said. So there is a story from out of Africa by the Zulu people. They believe that the moon was sent across the universe and placed here as well. So their ancient story tells of two extraterrestrial brothers. I'm going to call them extraterrestrials. They said they look like reptiles, and that these brothers had created this egg. They called the moon an egg, hollowed it out, and sent it across the universe to Earth. Now that so closely matches the theory of these scientists that it just kind of blew me away.
Right.
Yep.
I think that is likely the case. I would agree with that. So man, there's so much. So we have,
there's multiple insiders and whistleblowers that have come forward saying that exact thing. The moon is, it's not a natural object. It's a ship. It was parked here a long time ago. William Tompkins says this.
well, William Tompkins says, first of all, it's no moon. Second of all, it's not ours.
It's not our moon.
Yeah, it's not our moon. It's not a moon, and it's not our moon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's interesting. Also, I think it was Alex Collier who said that he was told by the Andromedans or whoever that somehow he was able to confirm what they told him was that there was a metal shell underneath the Earth's crust, which would make sense with some of the elements that you were talking about that they were picking up, because it would have to be something like that if it was an actual ship. You would think that it's not completely organic. And, we have John Lear, who talked about, he said, well, he claimed that the backside of the moon had cities on it. And it was, if you were to fly back there, it would look like Manhattan. We've had other whistleblowers that claimed, no, that's not true. There's only a few bases back there. Regardless, we can agree that there are bases on the backside of the moon. And then we've had other whistleblowers claim that there's ancient remains of like an ancient space battle or something. There's remains up there of past civilizations. So
NASA's own data reveals that.
Right.
NASA's own, and they scrub out a ton, but even what people have been able to find there, you clearly see ancient ruins and obelisks and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
So they have, there are craters up there that look like they were, created from a nuclear explosion, not, your typical kind of meteor craters. They've got all of the, I'm not a scientist, but all of the elements of craters that we, there's one on Earth that looks very similar to the one on the moon, and it was created, from a war. So they have found those up there. I spent the time with the second book trying to connect these dots, and whether or not we have an extraterrestrial connection to the moon, and that perhaps whoever was or is on the moon, were they connected to us because they brought that ship here for whatever reason, and some of them came here. Who knows? But as far as connecting it to the war, we have places on Earth in South America where there have been cities found that were looked as though they were in a nuclear war that had nothing to do with our time frame. They can't place it. They don't understand it. It was before, the atomic bomb here. But there are these cities there, and they sort of reflect what has been described on the moon. And so there are some that speculate that perhaps we have a galactic connection, and maybe there was this war between not only Earth and the moon, but also Mars, because they're saying the same thing about Mars. But so there may be that connection to us. And this could have happened before our human history, because there is talk that human history started more than one time, that, we existed, that there were a cataclysm. We existed, we start again, another cataclysm. We don't really know what happened way out there. And the scientists are scratching their heads when they find atomic towns that looked like they were, in an atomic war. Fortunately for us, we do have a few writings that have been, handed down where there were talk. We call them myths, mythology.
Right.
And that's just an easy way of saying, oh, it's not real, but they don't really know they weren't there. And the mythology ties in with some of the artifacts being found in the world now. But so do we have a galactic connection? Was there a War of the Worlds long ago, and we just don't have a memory of it? Or the writings, maybe the history was in the Library of Alexandria, for example, that famous library that burned down in Roman times and during Julius Caesar's time, I believe it was, had a lot of information, and it may have had extraterrestrial, books in there about our connection with them. So I do talk about that, if can't do it all here, but in more detail in the new book. But yeah, I do wonder. And also, so whoever may be on the moon may be the result of the beings who came here initially. We don't know who and what they are or why they came. But, was this a generational ship where people, were in there for a long time, lived and died before reaching Earth? And they're there. Are they inside of the moon? Are they on the moon? If, on the surface, we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've heard, I think we've heard that Corey Good even said that the moon is inhabited, but with tons of people. I forget what number, thousands, if not millions of people who live out their entire lives there. They're born there, and the inside of the moon is an entire habitable zone, basically. And he even claims to have been brought to the moon in a secret space program, and was given a tour of some of the lava tubes. And he was surprised to see people in coats wearing with NASA on their lab coats. But he figured out that this was this was a covert side of NASA. This was a compartmentalized aspect of NASA that the public doesn't know about. So even though NASA is a face and a front for a lot of what's actually going on in space, they do have a compartment that is in the know, I believe, that we just don't know about. And, there's so many things that are going on inside the moon. All of these whistleblowers who claim to be in a secret space program claim to have been taken to the moon first before they were stationed elsewhere. So it seems like it could also be a jump room or a jump point for they go to the moon first, and then you go wherever you need to go. Whatever happens up there, who knows? We've heard prison planet, we've heard cloning. We know we've heard that there's the Lunar Operations Command, which is 3 separate bases. One of them was in the shape of a swastika, which isn't that far out of the realm of possibility, considering that there is a Navy base in San Diego that is in the shape of a swastika as well. And if it's the same group of people who are running this space program, it's not a surprise that there might be a structure in that shape up there. There's a lot going on.
The reptilians use it,
Well, yeah, that's the question. I've been trying to do this, the tracing back, but are there humans there with, ETs? Who are the ETs? Is it just the reptilian and grays? Or were they ETs there before they came in?
Mm-hmm.
Or were there ETs there that left, maybe after the Galactic War, and they came in? We don't know if we're looking at the original beings or not. And are they all working together, or are there certain areas of it now? Certain areas where, they're separated, or, where some are working together, or there's the inhabitants that were there originally. People have said, oh, Constance, they've gone up, they've seen the moon, we've done that, they didn't find anything. And I'm like, no, we've only looked at less than 1% of the moon has been looked at by us. And we live, here in the U.S. We know how the U.S. can fit on the front of the moon, the back of the moon, the sides. There's a lot of space. We've traveled to different cities, but none of us have seen the whole United States. There could be who knows what going on there that we just haven't touched yet. And as far as the Apollo missions, they selected certain areas, certain parts they didn't want to land in, certain parts they probably knew they couldn't land in because they weren't welcome, perhaps. And then, they just they haven't seen it all. Also, as one host told me, if there are extraterrestrials up there working and living, they can just turn the lights off when we want to go up. We wouldn't find them.
Right.
Yep.
Well, that's another thing so if a city or a base is in a crater, we've heard other whistleblowers claim that they're cloaked. That you think you're flying into an empty crater until you get through this field, this like force field, and then they fly through it, and then all of a sudden these buildings, there's all kinds of activity and almost like a city basically. But if you were to fly over it or even view with a telescope, it just looks totally insignificant. This looks like an empty crater. So that's another possibility, that they're cloaked. And like William Tompkins says, so this is a story directly from what he claims. So even the people at NASA at Mission Control Houston, they didn't even know that the footage that they were seeing was faked. So NASA wasn't even in on the cover up either. Like there was a major secret CIA cover up that even the people at NASA were unaware of. But according to William Tompkins, he was in a room in a Navy base in California during the original Apollo missions, where he was watching the actual live feed, which showed them land in a crater that was surrounded by craft, and they were basically, scared off and told to go back home. And he explains that whole story, how a certain part of the footage that was showed to the public was cut out, and they blamed it on some type of radio blackout or whatever. There was a lot of shady stuff going on. So it's all very interesting. We have the Stanley Kubrick information where it's almost verifiable that there was some sort of hoaxed footage, regardless if that's what we were shown or not. There was some hoaxed footage or staged moon landing footage.
What I find fascinating too is, aside from humans that, may have come from Earth and may be working there, I find it fascinating that there are, extraterrestrials on the moon, and anybody on the moon that have lived there and died there and living out their whole lives there. I really wonder what that culture is like. Try to place myself in that situation, because looking at the history of however this thing began, if it brought people in, were they like us, or did they come in here? And, there's been talk of us interacting with extraterrestrials, with our DNA and all of this. Are those a part of the group there? And just, do they come back and forth? Is this where the TikToks are coming from? TikToks, yeah. TikToks are coming from. I just wonder. I've seen footage with ships leaving the moon and entering, and I'm like, are they going to Earth? Where are they going? Very, very interesting stuff. And the idea of the moon, there's an idea that it is a foreign country, that setting what people think about the secret space agency here aside, because if there's a secret space agency that are working with them, working up there, I wonder, do they have to, have some sort of agreement with the extraterrestrials that are there? Is that a foreign country of its own, the moon, where they have their own superiors and their laws and people living there? And were they humanoid?
Well, you bring up some interesting points that I haven't really thought about, because all my research into the moon has been like from what whistleblower testimonies and certain, obviously some ancient cultures talked about the moon, but I've never really thought about who was on the moon before us. We hear about all these apparent like space stations and bases from our space program, but your question you keep going back to is who was originally there? Like who was living there before we ever made it there? And that's really interesting. That's really interesting to think about.
Well, if you look at the text from the ancient Indians in the Sanskrit text, they are pretty amazing. they talk about their gods traveling. They had aerial technology and traveling the skies and also going as far as outer space to the moon and beyond. Now, people, again, they say it's mythology, but they specifically said that, they could go to the moon. And not only do they just say they could do it, they laid out the blueprints for their aircraft to show how they were built. It talked about the energy they were using. So if they had people that are going back and forth, that's very interesting. Did they interact here? And also, I was wondering, did we get stuck up there? Could we have had that technology way back when to go to the moon, and then there was a cataclysm here that prevented them from returning to Earth? And that, they actually may be human because they were going back and forth. There could be humans that got stuck up there. That was a theory. And so I've been coming from, my new book takes it from the beginning, and it goes, all the way, up to here. And, I've got in there Einstein's letter, Einstein and Oppenheimer's letter of what to do if we ran into extraterrestrials. What is it? The Institute. Oh gosh, my brain is freezing. There was NASA had sought advice on what to do if we ran into extraterrestrials, and they got some advice from a government institution. So the idea is not a new one, that there may be someone there that we may run into, but I would like to know if they're connected to Earth.
Yeah.
That's just
right. And you also mentioned you've seen footage of craft coming and going from the moon. Like that's actual real footage. It's telescope footage, and I feel like if you had the right telescope that was able to record, and you could probably point it at the moon on any given time and probably catch something. I think it's very active. And one video in particular I saw shows what appears to be a little portal open up and then close again, which is really, that's really interesting to me, which means that that's, probably another way they're coming and going to the moon. We have these wormholes and these vortexes, which I think I've heard it described as a wormhole is how to get from point A to point B in the same dimension and the same, and then a vortex is how you would traverse to a different dimension.
Right.
I don't know if that's accurate, but it's interesting to think about it like that.
I refer to it as the Extraterrestrial Highway, and in my new book, that they're traveling that way, and because the mainstream, which makes me feel like I'm living in a different universe. Sometimes, they're like, oh, there's no aliens, there's no extraterrestrials. You know how long it would take them to travel across the universe to find us sitting on the corner here? I'm like, no, there are portals. There are stargates. There are wormholes that they have learned to use to cut the distance and time short when it comes to traveling. But they're never going to talk about that in the mainstream. It gives me headaches. So also for the people that are tuning into the show who don't know much about this story, and especially for those that don't even believe we went to the moon, I get that all the time too. Right. I just want to say that the evidence of whether or not someone is up there, because there are people not familiar with the whistleblowers and who've never heard them. I say go back to the basics. They have been seeing movement and lights on the moon since the invention of the telescope. This isn't a made-up story. This is something that the astronomers of that time, they swore that there was life on the moon. They saw all kinds of things going on. And when we reached, modern science, they said, oh, you can't live on the moon. There's nobody that can be on the moon. Well, they weren't looking at artificial environments, and they weren't understanding that we know nothing of extraterrestrials and how they live or their makeup, that we are made, with these avatars, I call them, these bodies are avatars, here to be able to live on Earth. We don't know the makeup of another species of being that may be able to be on the moon, with a little oxygen, or, they say there's a little oxygen on the moon, or none, or in some sort of outfitted in some sort of AI technology, right?
Right.
So those, I'm trying to say that those astronomers way back then swore that they were seeing things and people and beings moving across the moon. And we discounted it and said, no, our science says no. But then we've come full circle, because now, even before NASA sent the Apollo missions up, they commissioned 2 books, 2 catalogs, documenting things that they have found, strange things going on in the moon before they sent anyone up. They talked about the strange lights that appeared on the moon, above the moon, around the moon during a lunar eclipse. There were lights moving. They talked about, like there was one time someone said there's like this insects. I forget the name of the astronomer. There's so many of them. Insects moving across the surface of the moon. I documented them. They traveled like 12 miles in 24-hour period or something like that. There are lights going on and off way before we sent the astronauts. Then we send them up, and the Clementine mission and the orbiters brought back all of this footage of structures. Even though they tried to hide them, a lot of stuff got through. A lot of stuff. So my point is that there have been even things going on the moon before we sent the missions to the moon, that let us know that someone somehow was up there.
Right. And it's all very interesting. And what's another telltale sign that there's some sort of cover up is that when NASA is questioned about it, they misplaced the files and they taped. And then when they asked about the footage, they said due to a shortage of funding, they had to tape over the footage because they didn't have the funding for new VHS tapes or whatever the hell they were using. Like,
so ridiculous.
The most slap in your face, bogus cover story. It's almost like they just wanted to see what they can get away with telling the public.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Also, they could have just been irresponsible. There was one gentleman, and I tell you, there's so many names, I can't rattle them off. Sometimes people get annoyed at me. They're like, what are their names? I'm like, it's in the book. But there was one gentleman that went over to do some investigative work. And he said there were just photographs in cardboard boxes in a warehouse from the mission. So I'm thinking some of it they may have also been irresponsible. That tape that came out a few years ago where they said they had heard space music on the moon. Do you remember hearing about music on the moon? Okay, so
no, I don't.
One of the missions, I want to say Apollo 12, where they went behind the moon for an hour. So when they're on the back side of the moon, on the far side of the moon, they're out of touch for an hour. And it really wasn't space music. It was more strange sounds. And the astronauts could be heard talking about it in the recordings, because they recorded everything, their transcripts of everything. They said, oh, do you hear that? Oh, that's weird space music. Oh, nobody's going to believe it. Should we tell it? No, we shouldn't tell it, because they're going to, think we're cuckoo or whatever, words to that effect. So they didn't tell it. Then they came back, and all of the transcripts and recordings were filed away. Years and years later, they found these things in a box somewhere in a drawer. Okay, so my point is, they could have just been irresponsible and lost some of the stuff. And even though it sounds stupid that they recorded over it, they just may have.
Right. I mean, anything is possible, but it is suspect. You have to ask yourself, like, okay, what's actually going on here?
And the other thing, excuse me, that I wonder is, do the people working at NASA today have any clue about what they were hiding back then? Those people are gone. They've died off. I look at the astronauts. I was watching one young lady last night on the news. She was an astronaut talking about going to the moon and maybe further than that one day. And I'm like, do you have any clue what might be up there? They don't tell you guys, and they don't take us seriously.
Right.
The researchers who have their hands in it, they're not going to take us seriously. But I'm not sure they're telling them. They're talking about sending astronauts to the moon. And I'm still shocked that that NASA knew way back in the 60s, before sending these guys up, they had a catalog. You can buy it on Amazon with all of these things that they had seen, and they still sent them up. But I'm not so sure that the new people get versed in this stuff.
Well, I don't think they do. I definitely don't think they do. I think it's all part of the indoctrination, and that's how you pull off a cover up, and that's how you keep the dog and pony show going. Is you have the people indoctrinated and mind controlled and programmed enough, who are top scientists and researchers and physicists within NASA, who think they're working on the most advanced technology, the greatest, the biggest and best that we have as humanity. They think they're at the leading edge of all this stuff, when unfortunately they're not. And that's where it lies. But you have to have those people in place who fully believe that what they're doing is organic and true, so it's believable for the masses that they're trying to deceive. Because eventually, if somebody knows that they're lying to you and they're just putting on a front, people are going to see through that. But when you have people up there honestly telling you from their hearts that there's nothing on the moon, and all this mainstream logistics and these physics of why we can't get here, whatever, they're telling you all this stuff, they honestly truly believe that, and people feel that they're not lying. That's why they believe it. So it's not even their own fault. Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
But that doesn't mean they're right just because they believe in that. But it's a mental thing, like you said. People don't question things if it's coming from an authority. It's coming from NASA. Oh, that must be the truth. But yeah, like you said, everything is compartmentalized in our world, and every single compartment is told they're at the top of the pyramid, when in fact they're nowhere close to it for the most part. They're lied to. There's truth mixed with a lot of lies with all of those for various reasons. All the compartments are only told exactly what they need to know to run their compartment. David Icke talks all about this, and that's how it works. And like you said, if they try to control things with everyone knowing the truth, but trying to control them through that, it would be so hard to do, for one. And like you said, people can see through when people are lying intentionally. But when you get people believing lies 100%, you can feel that too. Right. So that's how that's one of the most effective, ways the control system works on our planet. Yeah. It's a matter of us taking responsibility to figure out for ourselves what truth is, rather than having it handed to us. And that's what we're doing on the show. Yeah.
So have you ever heard the theory that the moon is like a prison planet or a soul harvesting station? Because I've heard both of those. We hear all of it, Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I've had my hands in the research about life after death, and I've written a book about it for people like the Encyclopedia of the Moon. I did the Encyclopedia of the Unseen World, and there's nowhere in there in all of my research did anyone say that. Well, I guess if they got caught, they couldn't come back and say it. I don't know. But no one said that they came across the moon, or that there was a problem. So as far as I can tell, I couldn't find anything on that. I don't like that theory. It's very disturbing. But I mean, I have there are so many people that come to me with stories about their loved ones visiting them. Okay, I have my own stories, in that area with my mom and dad, visiting me after they crossed over. So apparently they did not get caught in any, trap. The story is, for your audience, the story is that when you leave the body after dying, and you see the light, that light is a trap. Okay, they're saying don't go towards the light, because that light is a trap. It's on the moon. There's a box-like object on the moon, and while you go towards it, and then you get trapped, and there are extraterrestrials up there using it to harvest souls. But like I said, in my travels, for people who have had near-death experiences, who have crossed over and come back, they went into the light and they saw the other side, and they've come back and reported it. So I can't say that the light is a trap.
Yeah, I personally think that's a psyop by the dark ones to get us to not go to the light. I think it's a psyop personally, where that came from.
100%.
So,
like, what better way to trick somebody, like to keep them, if there is a soul trap, it probably wouldn't be on the moon, or like, let's just say there's some sort of system set up that forces somebody to reincarnate instead of transitioning to where they're supposed to go and evolving their soul. It's a perfect psyop to put the message out on planet Earth that the light is a lie or the light is a trap. So then these people die and they remember, oh shit, I'm going to the light. This is a trap. I don't want to do that. Then they leave, they veer right or left, and all of a sudden they're in the trap. That seems to be more likely the case.
And, the other thing is, I know this show is about the moon, but just, on the side, you don't pass away and leave without some help. There are guides. You have guides. Yeah. And so you've got your helped over. So I have yet to believe anything, like I said, it could be a trap for people going sideways. There obviously are people who have turned away and stayed here for whatever reason. But in the end, everyone does go, and they are called. They do, for even people who are stuck here as what we call ghosts, if you will, eventually they do cross over. But yeah, so I don't think people need to worry about that. And I really hate the rumor. You know?
Me too. It's like fear mongering, really. It's just more fear surrounding death. First of all, they want you to fear death. Now they want you to fear what's going to happen after you die. Like, where do I go? Like, they want you to be even stressed out then, So it's all, like you said, we have guys that are there. And I feel like, I just feel like we're all divinely protected, and whenever that comes to that, and they don't want you to know that.
Absolutely. There was one lady who had killed herself, and she found herself sitting in a dark space, a dark place, and she was very worried about being in that dark space forever because she had committed suicide. And sure enough, someone came. She could see the light coming. Someone came, person, and came and took her and escorted her out. But they did tell her she had to return.
Yeah.
So even a person who found themselves in the dark, and some of that may have been of her own mind, because we are powerful spiritual beings, in these bodies. She may have manifested that darkness herself, thinking, I killed myself. I can't cross over. Sure enough, someone did come out of that light, she said, and took her out. Yep. So don't worry, people.
Right. Yeah. No, it's all very fascinating. And it's interesting. You can create that for yourself if you believe in something too. Like, that's obviously how manifestation works. You create your own reality based on what you believe is possible. And I've never really considered that carrying over into the afterlife, but it's very possible. And it's very interesting.
So one of the reasons that I go back to the ancient times and trying to track our lives with the moon, our connection, is because I think that as a species on this planet, we need to grow. Don't we want to be the ones, who want to have that Star Trek? I'm a Trekkie. That Star Trek future, where we are using, technology from the future, where we are traveling, where we have been welcomed into a galactic community. So, if we have any connection to the moon and Mars and all of the other planets in the solar system, because believe it or not, the other ones are said to be inhabited too, even though we cannot fathom it. They are said to be inhabited and by beings that can survive there in their own way. So that's another story. But don't we want to make that connection? Shouldn't we know where we came from if we're connected to the moon and what's going on up there and whether or not it's going to affect our future, even if we're not here? There is the reincarnation cycle. There are our kids and future grandkids. Why do we have to be the ones stuck, and standing still all the time. So I'm trying to get us to that point where we talk about the past and bring it to the future.
Right. And it's interesting to think about the possibility that, life can exist under all conditions, even the most extreme conditions. And we see examples of that here on Earth in the coldest Arctic below zero climates. And then even inside volcanoes, there's certain organisms that can live and thrive. And that's how they actually exist in those environments. And there might be planets out there that don't require oxygen for whatever species to live. It's probably, specific to each atmosphere is what life is going to look like on that planet. And we're just programmed that it has to be our conditions. And there has to be that Goldilocks planet out there that's in the perfect place, positioned between the sun and, whatever. That's not
the only way life can,
That's probably the only way we're going to, that might be one of the ways we'll find another planet most similar to Earth, maybe, but I think that if a planet is uninhabitable on the surface, you can live underground. I mean, there's so many different possibilities. Some of these space stations we talk about, spaceships, cruisers are actually planets, like our last guest talked about, and even Alex Collier talks about the ship that he was stationed on had a huge ecosystem with mountains and rivers and waterfalls and just life, an abundance of life. It's really interesting.
Ship. So
the city ship. Have you heard that phrase before? A city ship, and there's just worlds of their own, which is of course what the moon just may be in there. Just really interesting stuff. And also there are city ships thought to be near us that are ready, I hear, to lift some of us off if there is a worldwide catastrophe in an effort to save, the life on this planet, the DNA of life on this planet. I hear that some of those ships are available, but that's, it's complicated, but they are said, to be out there. And but we're at a point in this world where we're still trying to convince people that these things are real and that they exist. We're at the point where we have people like you guys who are trying to get that word out to help us to lift ourselves up, to be more. But I mean, you talk about this stuff with what I call mainstream thinkers that are may be doing great work in the world. I'm not putting down mainstream thinkers, but just trying to open people's minds to these possibilities. And even when you're showing them evidence of things, there are people all over the place talking about, for example, the moon, ships that they've seen, they're documenting it. Different countries have documented this stuff, and you show it to them and they just, they can't accept it because they've been indoctrinated for so long with one way of thinking.
Yep.
And we've got to, I just think we have to move past that.
Right. And it's all frequency specific. It's all frequency specific. What I mean by that is some of this stuff that is out there, if somebody's programmed and indoctrinated enough into a specific frequency, they might not be able to see anything that exists in a higher frequency outside of themselves. So when they look for these UFOs or things that they hear other people talking about, they literally can't see it because of their vibration. And the people who are vibrating at a higher rate can see that stuff. And I think there's like so many levels, even above us, that there are other things that exist. I've heard theories that there's 4 moons that exist and that you can only see them depending on your vibration. I've heard that there's 2 suns, same thing. Who knows? It could be, maybe it's that vibration is in fact another dimension. And just by raising your frequency, you're automatically seeing bleed through from that other dimension. But somebody who's existing, who's programmed and been dumbed down by the system and is willingly operating in the matrix, they're not going to have access to that stuff. So it's in their reality, it's not real.
That's interesting. That would explain a lot as far as I've heard people, for example, I have one friend who created a film documentary who said Black people, it said, the name of it is Black People Really Do See UFOs. Okay.
Right.
Now, it had nothing to do with what I'm going to say has nothing to do with race, really, but that's the name of the documentary. Because
Okay.
my point is, she lives in Chicago, the Chicago area, and she was reporting UFOs all the time outside near her home. And people weren't seeing them. She had them on film, but they were not seeing them. So, what are you talking about? I was out there last night. I didn't see anything. What are you talking about? She says, I've got a document. She did. She has them right there. It's almost as if they were appearing for her, but others weren't seeing them until they looked at the tape, and they're like a lot of times we'll get, I don't know about you, but strange things appear on the doorbell, the ring.
Right.
Cameras, right? And you don't see it, but then you see it on the film. Well, that's what she was getting, but she could see them. And the other guys weren't seeing them, but she got it on film. Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
So that may be what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah, sometimes an experience that happens in real time. I just had this happen to me in Florida in December. We were doing, it was for the 12/21 solstice. We were doing a ceremony, a Native American ceremony, whatever. And we had a circle, and they were playing some drums.
Mhm.
And I swear to God, a craft came above our circle in the sky, middle of the day. It was a white glowing craft. It just came and stopped, and it was parked there. Everybody in the circle saw it except for one person just could not see it. They didn't know what we were. They didn't know what we were talking about. And she was just like, I just can't see it. I don't know what. And we're all pointing. They're like, look here. And then once you saw it, you could not see it. And it stayed there. For the duration of our meditation, and we were all watching it, and it moved. It was moving a little bit, and all of a sudden it just disappeared. And it was totally fantastic because daylight sightings are always exciting, but the one girl simply couldn't see it. And it's very interesting, why that would be.
Yep.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow, it blows my mind.
Yeah.
I've only had two experiences where I saw a craft, and I'm not out much at night anyway. So, but I'm usually home, and I too tired to stay up anyway.
Right, I get that.
When I was a kid, I did see something that was huge, and I get headaches thinking about. I tried to figure it out for years. What it was. I could have seen once I understood that airplanes and helicopters make noise and that they can't hover. Once I understood that, I'm like, oh, that was a UFO. Oh my God, that must have been some kind of ship, and then I saw one. I mean, that one was huge, and it was a traditional circle in the blackness. I could even see it, and it had lights. And then I saw a gorgeous one, when I was having an out-of-body experience, astral traveling.
Oh yeah.
So they're there too. There are ships out there. And this may be the case with the moon too, because I've heard about other ships being seen over the moon, but and then they're not there anymore. There are ships that are invisible right there, and you can see them if you're in the astral, in the astral body, and you can even go in. And a lot of times people. So I believe that a lot of people have come in to these different planetary bodies. For various reasons. And for Earth, I call them ground troops, that they were sent in here to do specific work at this time. A lot of people refer to them as starseeds and light workers, or even wanderers. I've heard people that have come in here to help people raise their consciousness so that they can see up, so that they can lift up, and that we can evolve as a species. What was my point? So some of us, I believe, have come into these material bodies that actually did come from, those ships that are in the vicinity to work here. Now, when we come in here, we can live out a whole lifetime from birth to gray hair, whereas if we leave, that home, ship or planet or wherever, and it's just a moment in time. You see, so it seems like because I walk around going, "Oh my God, I'm so tired." You know,
Right.
how many more years? It's true that I think we have come in here to work, and sometimes we are off planet when we go to sleep, and we can return, and we can see, and we can interact with with the people, in that ship, and then come back and continue on with our work. But I believe a lot of people are here to tell people and to help, get through to them that we really are in a sort of a galactic community. I call it the Star Trek community.
Right. I 100% agree with you. We are definitely doing work when we go to sleep in dream space, at the astral traveling, out of body, whatever it is. It's quite fascinating. And sometimes you wake up with recall of that and memories, and some people more than others, and they have amazing things to tell and share. And what's interesting about that is they may go somewhere, they may be going to a mothership above the moon, and they'll tell you all about it, but we'll never see it with our physical eyes.
Right.
It's existing in another dimension, another frequency. So it's all fascinating, but I agree with you 100%. We're all came here for that reason, Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, we have to put the pieces together, and it's not just the moon. We're connected to all of the planetary bodies. Like I said, they all have something going on with them, and but I think that we need to educate ourselves and learn more about what's going on.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's what we're doing the show for. I mean, it's to spread awareness. Yeah. And, even the people, even the haters, the trolls, the people that disagree, they're still they're tuning in for some reason. They're still hearing all this, whether they believe it or not. It's still planting a seed. And at the end of the day, it's restructuring that DNA blueprint, I think. And that gets passed down to the next generation. And eventually it's just common talk, and everyone has that direct knowing again.
Right.
So even when we're triggering these people, it's almost a good thing, because you're not inside of an echo chamber, and this information is getting out there, and you almost wonder if it's by design.
No, I think it is by design. Yeah. Like I said, I think people have come in here to do this work, to talk about these topics, and to wake people up.
Yeah, right. Just going back to the moon, I'm just glancing at my notes, a few things I wanted to touch on. In particular, I mentioned John Lear a few times. For one, rest in peace. He recently passed away, and he did a lot of great work disclosing this information, including this John Lear report from 1987, which has full disclosure. It's an entire booklet, 30-page book of just information that'll blow your mind from that time, 1987 and earlier. And he claims that the U.S. went to the moon secretly for the first time in 1962 from technology we recovered from a wrecked craft in 1953. That's his information, but it's interesting to think, okay, if that's accurate, and that was the first time the U.S. was going to the moon, that's 62. That's before the Apollo missions. Did the Apollo mission start? That was 69, right? Or 68. Yeah. So if that's the case, they definitely knew what was up there already.
They did know. Yeah. They did know. They said they put out a report that I hear they regretted it. The catalog of TR 2777, the catalog of lunar events. You can get it on Amazon, with lot of going back to the 1600s forward to the 1950s of strange phenomena. They knew. They knew, and they sent people up anyway. It could have been anything up there.
Right. There could have been multiple purposes. Another thing William Tompkins said was that this was like a Freemason ritual. So when they went up in 1969, they put a Mason flag, and they did a ritual or a ceremony, and that was all filmed separate. And then they rolled the cameras, and then they acted out the American flag thing. Who knows?
I heard that.
Yeah, who knows? But we understand the Masons and their involvement in all the Illuminati and all that stuff. So it's not surprising.
Down to the date they do things, the time they do things. That book that I gave you, Dark Mission.
Yeah.
That basically discloses everything about NASA, who they really are, what they really are doing. Everything they do has an occult meaning when you look into it, down to the dates, the times, the locations, where they landed on the moon, down to every single detail is all lines up with occult knowledge and everything. And it's rituals, like you said, they do these things as rituals. And it just shows you like the people behind NASA are, and the people at the top of the Freemasons and these secret societies are what we would call the Illuminati, the cabal, different names for them. But they are essentially a cult that they have all this occult knowledge, which isn't good or bad. Occult just means hidden. It's just esoteric knowledge that's been hidden from most of humanity. And they use it for nefarious purposes and for keeping themselves in power and keeping us oppressed and stuff. But yeah, NASA is very, very occult. Even the name NASA and their logo, everything about it.
A lot of logos have that in it. It's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this year plays out in the years to come, because we're seeing major shifts and every day there's things happening. It's not going to be the same planet. It's never going to go back to normal. Like, we're evolving, we're ascending, and we don't want to go back to normal, because that was the illusion. Even though things appear that they're dark and nasty right now, it's always been like that. It's just now surfacing, and people are seeing the people in control for who they truly are now. And it's up to us. It's up to people like us and all these truthers to lead the way and keep this information going and keep the flow of information going, because they're trying to stop the flow of all information,
That's right. Wow. Interesting.
Yep. We're in the great revealing, what the apocalypse means.
Right.
That's where we're in.
The great revealing. And for current update on what's happening on the moon, according to our most recent Navy whistleblower, who claims to be a part of a program that goes to the moon in real time on real missions sometimes. Within the past few months, he claims to have gone there and learned about a galactic space academy that is ready to roll. He said it was an abandoned spaceport that was repurposed it's going to be an academy for basically people joining the Space Force. Right now it's secret, but he says, if we get any sort of disclosure, that's going to be known. It's going to be an academy on the moon eventually. So if he's, which I have no reason to believe he's lying after speaking with him for over a year and a half now, and some of the things he showed me, if that is accurate information, it's fascinating.
Interesting.
Right.
Wow. Well, we'll see, won't we? There seems to be a space race again. All these countries are trying to get back to the moon right now. What happened? All of a sudden, it's a hot item again. There was definitely something occurred, and there's obviously theories, but maybe they discovered helium-3 is not. Well, I don't know how they would get that back. I was hearing that helium-3, it's in abundance up there, and countries are interested in it. But then I'm not a scientist, understand that it's not so easy to transport back here or something. So I'm not sure that's what it's about either.
Right.
I don't know why it all has to be a secret.
Well, yeah. Maybe one day we'll find out. Maybe one day we won't. At the end of the day, all this information doesn't matter, believe it or not, because what matters is what we're doing every day, for ourselves and evolving. And sometimes we get distracted by all this information and we forget to work on ourselves and do the inner work and the shadow work, so we can get to that vibration, so we can have conversations with our ET brothers and sisters, and we can see these things that we only have heard about before. There's so much that we're capable of, and instead of always constantly looking externally for information, if we truly get to a place where our vibration is in resonance and in alignment with source and the heart, and we're working from the heart, operating from the heart center, I think that we have access to all knowledge, and we can tap into information and things that we will no longer have to research because we already know it. Or maybe
So-
I just made all that up. I don't know.
No.
No, that's very true. And we'll be telepathic and, all the
Right.
rest of it. They're waiting for us to meet them halfway. They're waiting for us to grow and rise to the occasion and all the rest of it before they're going to fully start interacting and revealing themselves. So
Well, I hope it's sooner than later. We heard about the writer from Israel. What's his last name? Essen. And he shocked me. He shocked me when he mentioned the Galactic Federation.
Oh yeah.
I was in my kitchen with my husband and my two, well, they're not kids, they're young adults. And I told them about the Galactic Federation years ago, and nobody remembers. And, they don't always listen to me. They've got their own stuff going on. And I'm like, whoa, did they just say the Galactic Federation? And he was saying, the news was saying this wasn't the mainstream. Basically, that the extraterrestrials had told him that Earth is not ready. Earth is not ready yet. But I had heard of that Galactic Federation, 30 years ago. And so it wasn't news to me, but I was shocked to hear it in the mainstream. So one of the questions that I do ask in my new book is, are we really being held out of, kept out of the loop by officials on Earth, or are they the extraterrestrials because they don't believe that we're ready yet, because they don't want to see worldwide chaos? Now, the Earth officials may think, okay, this will be the collapse of civilization if they tell us, but it could be that the extraterrestrials are directing them to hold off.
I think it's both.
Right.
I think it's a mixture of both, because yes, there are the controllers that are trying to stay in power and not, but then at the same time, we're not, you look at a collective level, we're not, because most people would freak out. And so I have a feeling that certain events need to play out and to get us to a level, most people to a level that we can, and I think that's part of the reason why things get drip disclosured out. And the more people can open up their belief systems, for one, to this stuff, and not have it be such a, either you laugh at it like, oh, that's ridiculous, or like scared of it and in fear. And unfortunately, you do see that agenda played out, where a lot of mainstream media and a lot of these people and organizations are like pushing, are like fear mongering about, a possible alien invasion. Oh, the UFOs are a threat. Oh my God, be scared. And then all Hollywood movies, everything is always alien invasion. The scary aliens are going to get us.
That's right.
So if we can like break out of that and be open to other life beyond humans, and if they do show up, be not afraid, not scared of them, but not also just not, I mean, I guess that's it, because if they show up, there's no more denying they exist, but then it's a matter of not being afraid.
And you have to think of a benevolent race isn't going to come here if it's going to make things worse.
Yes.
Like if they've probably analyzed it, and if them showing up is going to cause chaos, division, destruction, even casualties, death. Then what's then it's not helping, no matter how many of us want them to show up and just rip the Band-Aid off and everybody can deal with it. If they're truly in alignment and truly here for humanity, they would never do that and cause all this chaos and ruckus. So if I have a feeling they're doing everything they can to help without directly doing that. So they're like, the UFO sightings are off the chart. I think they're doing that on purpose to like get us ready. Oh, what's that? Like, oh, maybe they're ET, get us to open our minds to it. Right.
And the energies and everything else,
So have you guys heard about, do you know the Gene Roddenberry story?
Yeah. Well, maybe.
About him sitting in on channeling sessions.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. So basically.
The 9.
Oh, yeah, the Council of Nye. Yeah, so basically, he was sitting in on these sessions with extraterrestrials he wasn't with them, they were using telepathy to give information to a channel. And he had heard about it, Gene Roddenberry, and he was sitting in. And the story is that he got these ideas for Star Trek. And there's another show that I just actually learned about. It's an old show, but Star Trek and this other program as a way of introducing the public to the idea of first contact and that we're not alone in the universe. So there are some stories out there that say that extraterrestrials are using our media, the good extraterrestrials, to sort of prepare humanity for the idea of one day, coming into a galactic community. So that is, one way that they're, trying to reach us, which would make sense.
Absolutely. I believe that 100%. I think some of the movies, I even take it as far as I wonder if some scenes in certain movies might even be filmed off planet on an underground base or another whatever. And they slip it in and you would never know the difference if you're looking at the real thing or not. Just like we've heard Stargate SG-1 in season 1, we've heard that there's 2 scenes in particular where they actually used footage of the actual Stargate in Cheyenne Mountain. And you never know the difference because you just think you're watching a movie set. If it happened once on that show, there's no doubt in my mind that it's happened in other movies and shows. I feel like that's true. I don't know.
That's amazing. I hadn't heard that one. I did come across when I was writing my book, when you're writing, all of this stuff kind of comes, back and out of you. And I've got guides helping and we all do. But in this particular instance, I remembered seeing a Star Trek episode where there was the Federation, Captain Kirk and his crew were chasing an asteroid. And this thing was about to crash into a planet and they had to go and stop it, prevent it from doing so. And they beamed down to this thing only to find that it was a world and it was camouflaged to look like an asteroid. This was before, the hollow moon theory came out. It was a whole civilization living within this thing that on the top looked like an asteroid going through space. And on the inside was generations of people who thought they were on a world. And, they were actually, they were fleeing from a cataclysm on their planet and they went aboard this thing. And that story was out there long before Star Trek, even went up.
That's
and
very interesting. Yeah.
Some of the, I believe that the name of it is For the Moon is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. And some of the scripts that they were talking about from the Star Trek show is that Gene Roddenberry had gotten some of these ideas from that channeling session. So who knows what part of it or how much of it was actually true. And they were trying to, feed it to us that way.
Right. Whenever I was just talking about the Stargate stuff and other movies being filmed off planet and stuff, I got a major hit in my left ear and this like vibrate. It's hard to explain, but I always, when that happens, it feels like it's like my guide's confirming, like, what you're like, keep talking about that because it's true. So I use that as my own little gauge. I don't doesn't mean what I said is a fact, but for me, I feel like there's some truth to that.
Do you know that there is a picture of what some people think may have been a Stargate on the moon?
I don't know if I've seen that picture. I've seen the Stargate in Antarctica on Google Earth.
Well, it's a theory, and it came out through Michael Sala. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Right. Yeah.
We love Michael.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say that. I mentioned him on one show, and the host just didn't like it.
Oh.
And they didn't like me mentioning Adamski either, but that was.
Well, Adamski's interesting. There's a lot of people that wonder if his information's valid or not. So, but continue what you're saying. Yeah.
So in this photo, there really is what looks like a Stargate from like the TV series Stargate. It's round and it's blue. It's a round blue circle on the surface of the moon. And he said, it really does look like a Stargate. And he wondered if it possibly could be, because they can't understand what it is and why it's there.
Right. Yeah. What are your thoughts on, what's his name? George Adamski. What's his name?
Adamski.
Yeah, George Adamski, Adamski.
So, yeah, what are your thoughts on him?
I've heard that there is information that came out that disproved him, but you hear that about everything, right? Everybody's lied and everybody's, if you listen to the skeptics, it's ridiculous. I think he had an amazing experience. I believe him. And I think that we should, take him as seriously as we take Alex Collier, who I also am happy to hear you talk about. So no, I think his experiences are, for me, they're valid. He is in my book. He did see some interesting things on the moon. He talked about seeing people, and I believe it was foliage up there. And he saw, towns. I'm looking like this because I'm kind of getting my contactees in the book a little mixed up sometimes, who saw what. But he traveled into space the first trip, and the Venetians told him about the moon, and he took some pictures, and he traveled again, and he got more information. I believe him, and I was happy to include him in my book. And I was happy to have the information he provided.
Right.
And I think he was selected, like so many are, because of his open mind to it all.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so, like you said, you nailed it when you said everyone has been debunked or it's been proven as a hoax, Yeah, debunked in quotes, meaning like no matter what whistleblower has come forward, somebody out there has in their mind debunked them. So it's up to you, the individual, to decide for yourself. And we don't really need anyone else to tell us, and, if somebody else has information that you should know, share it. But I think that you're not really going to find that information on the internet if he was lying or not. It's never going to be validated by any mainstream source. So you just have to read books like yours and make your own decision.
Oh, thank you. He's got books out too. I mean, George Adamski, wrote his story down. It's there for everyone to read and, make up their own mind. Right. But don't let the naysayers get you. Or, you've got to think for yourself. Do your own research. For example, with the whole moon thing, I can share the stories. I consider myself I call myself a galactic historian. I'm keeping track of all of this. I want to do something with the moon. But I mean, I can share the stories and the information, but you have to, keep the conversation going and do your own research, really to get anywhere.
Right. Beautifully said. I absolutely agree with that. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a lot of fun, and I think we covered it. We covered it pretty well. Will you please let people know how to find you and where they can get your books?
Oh, sure. So you can get my books on Amazon. Very easy. They're all under Constance Victoria Briggs. The new one will be out in July 25th. They have the date up on Amazon. The Moon Mystery book is designed to make it easy for people to just kind of get into this knowledge. It's alphabetized. They can look up everyone from Neil Armstrong to cosmonauts or craters. What's in the craters? Just go into craters, structures on the moon. It's you can jump around. But then the second one is more in depth. It goes kind of deep into history and into theories as to who brought the moon here, why it's here, what it is, what's going on. But you can get the books on Amazon. I have a website, ConstanceVictoriaBriggs.com. You can email me there if you have any questions. There's also Facebook. I've got a Moon Mysteries page up and the Galactic Connection page. with Constance Victoria Briggs.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Beautiful. Looking forward to the new book. And I love how it's actually an encyclopedia that you can actually look things up. I mean, for research purposes, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's the first book.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, guys, go grab her book. Go check out her website. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you again for joining us. Guys, thanks for tuning in. This is going to be our last episode for before the conference, and we'll be back after our conference. I'm not sure when. We don't have anything on the schedule yet. It's wide open for now. But if you want, grab a live stream ticket. It's a little late to purchase an in-person ticket, I realize, but if you can make it, they're still available until midnight tonight. Otherwise, grab a live stream ticket, come hang out with us, and we look forward to seeing everyone there who's actually going to make it. We love you guys. Thank you for all your support. And until next time, have a great evening.
I mean, for the average listener who's listening to these experiences, it doesn't make any sense how they could be doing this.
Yeah, it's complicated because that's reality. Reality is complicated. Our lives ain't simple. We can't put everything in simple boxes in black and white. That ain't how it works out there.
I think that they're going to want to give us a disclosure that brings people up to speed quickly, but also keeps them in the dark about the real important stuff. They're going to give us 90% of the truth with 10% of the lies. Mm-hmm. And those 10% of lies are more damning than all the truth can overcome.
They realize that if this goes the way it probably will go, they could face crimes against humanity charges at some point with the International Criminal Court, and that's the bigger issue. There will be people who are political elites here in this country that people will not understand why they're being charged. These people that everyone looks up to, and they're like, oh my God, these people are so awesome. And all of a sudden they're getting charged for crimes against humanity. And what these people don't realize is these particular individuals enabled these corporations to do what they did.
They're not going to drag us across the finish line, but it's going to be hard, but it has to be hard. So people will always remember, and this won't ever happen again.
It's all written in us. We're just kind of playing this out, regardless of what the surface war happens to look like right now. And I think our purpose here is really developing our consciousness.
This whole process is not just about what's going on in the world and this great awakening that's happening with all these different people. It's about the great awakening that's happening with all of the individuals and how we can take care of ourselves and keep ourselves healthy, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
We're taught not to go into this part of ourselves that knows everything. We're taught to turn that off, actually, very purposefully, so that we are in a confused state that we rely on authority, right?
Because we incarnate for these experiences, It's not a victim thing. I incarnated for this experience, so then the question is why?
And oftentimes they program us. They help in programming us and giving us those limiting beliefs. And we have to kind of shatter those and be like, no. This is actually my divine self. This is actually what helps me align with the divine creator. And I need to purge all those things that you programmed me with, or that the programs programmed me with.
Understanding the larger picture and things like secret space programs is really important. We want to know what's operating behind the scenes that's controlling this individuals in these leadership positions and this larger sort of negative ET agenda, but also the kind of support and assistance that we're getting, while also appreciating the fact that we're here to save ourselves and to step up to the plate. And it's really important to step up to the plate.